You've spent years saving every dollar you could, working late nights, missing birthdays, taking on jobs nobody else wanted just so you could build something that mattered. For Marcus Johnson, that something was a quiet cabin by the lake, a place where his kids could grow up fishing at dawn, where family barbecues filled the summer air, where peace felt possible in a world that often gave him none. But one morning, Marcus woke up to the sound of bulldozers and chainsaws. At first, he thought he was dreaming. The heavy rumble shook the earth under his feet. Then came the crack of wood splintering, like bones snapping. By the time he rushed outside, barefoot in the dirt, his cabin was already half gone. The walls were collapsing, glass shattering, the smell of fresh-cut wood filling the air like a funeral. The local homeowners association, the HO, had shown up without warning, claiming he hadn't paid some mysterious community fees. And without so much as a court order, they destroyed everything he had worked for. Marcus stood there frozen, heart hammering in his chest. His neighbors peeked from behind curtains, some whispering, others filming. A few shook their heads in disbelief, but no one stepped in. On the edge of the site stood the HO president, a sharp-jawed man in an expensive polo shirt and mirrored sunglasses. He smirked like this was just another day at the office. "Stop. You can't do this." Marcus's voice cracked as he sprinted toward the machines. His 8-year-old daughter clutched his leg, crying, "Daddy, why are they breaking our house?" Marcus looked down at her, his throat tight, rage boiling under his skin. "It's okay, baby," he whispered, though he knew it wasn't. "Daddy's here." "Step back, sir," one of the hired demolition workers barked, waving him off like a trespasser on his own land. Marcus's fists clenched. "This is my cabin. You can't just..." That's when Charles Whitaker, the HO president, stepped forward. His smirk widened. "Should have paid your dues, Mr. Johnson. Rules are rules." The words landed like poison. Marcus had lived in this county his whole life. His grandfather had fought in Vietnam. His father had been a church deacon, the kind of man everyone respected. Marcus himself worked 2 jobs to keep food on the table for his family. And now some smug HO official thought he could bulldoze their legacy because of a few $100 fees Marcus had never even been told about? He wanted to swing, to make Whitaker eat that smirk. But he didn't. Instead, he pulled out his phone, hit record, and pointed it right at the man. "This is illegal," Marcus said, his voice steady despite the storm inside him. "And you're going to pay for it." Whitaker chuckled. "Good luck with that." The machines kept roaring, chewing through what had once been Marcus's living room. Dust clouded the air, stinging his eyes. His daughter pressed her face into his shirt, sobbing. The neighbors' phones caught every second. His humiliation, the destruction, Whitaker's arrogance. But Marcus wasn't helpless. Not completely. He had already sent a single text, just one line to his brother Daniel in D.C. They're tearing down the cabin. Minutes later, his phone buzzed. Daniel's voice came through, low, steady, dangerous. "Don't do anything yet," Daniel said. "We'll handle this." Marcus's hands trembled. "Daniel, they destroyed my home." "I heard you," Daniel replied. "Now let me make some calls." The Johnson family had always been close. Cookouts every July, holiday dinners that went late into the night. And behind the laughter and warmth, there was a shared fire, a refusal to let anyone trample their dignity. What the HO didn't know was that Marcus's family wasn't ordinary. His brother Daniel was an FBI agent, his cousin Terrence was a U.S. Marshal, his sister Alicia, a federal prosecutor. The Johnsons weren't just a family. They were a network of federal power, all bound by blood and loyalty. So when the word spread through the family group chat, Marcus's cabin demolished by HO thugs, every phone lit up. Alicia slammed her coffee cup on the table, muttering, "They picked the wrong family." Terrence loaded his service weapon into its holster and whispered, "Not on my watch." The Johnsons weren't the kind of people you crossed and walked away smiling. By the time the bulldozers rolled off, leaving nothing but rubble and dust behind, Marcus's daughter was kneeling in the dirt, holding a splintered piece of wood from what used to be her bedroom. She cradled it like a broken toy, tears streaking her cheeks. Marcus dropped to his knees beside her. His voice shook. but his eyes were steel. "I promise you, baby, we'll get it back. Every piece. And they'll regret what they did." He raised his phone higher, capturing every detail of the ruins, every arrogant smirk from Whitaker, every cruel word. And that video? By the time Marcus uploaded it to social media, it wasn't just another post. It was a spark. And in a country already on edge about power, race, and injustice, it was about to catch fire. That night, Marcus sat on the porch of his brother's house, his daughter asleep beside him, clutching the wood scrap like a teddy bear. The air smelled of smoke from neighbors' grills, but he barely noticed. His phone was blowing up with notifications. His video had been shared thousands of times in just a few hours. Hashtags were forming. Journalists were messaging him. Strangers across the country were outraged on his behalf. But the one notification that made his chest tighten was a simple text from Alicia. "Get ready. We're coming." Marcus looked out at the lake, dark and still under the moon. Somewhere across the water, a bullfrog croaked. He took a slow breath, his anger cooling into something sharper, something stronger. They had taken his home. But in doing so, they had awakened something much bigger than they ever expected. And the Ho had no idea who they were really messing with. The morning after the demolition, Marcus sat at his brother Daniel's kitchen table, staring at his calloused hands. The smell of fresh coffee filled the air, but he couldn't bring himself to drink it. His daughter, still shaken, slept on the couch in the next room, curled under a blanket like she was trying to disappear. Daniel, sharp in his usual pressed shirt and tie even on his day off, leaned against the counter with his arms crossed. They had no warrant, no court order, nothing, he said. His voice was clipped, the way it got when he was furious but forcing himself to stay calm. "That makes it not just wrong, Marcus. It makes it illegal." Marcus rubbed his temples. "They said I hadn't paid some Ho dues. I never got a single letter about that. Not one notice." Daniel shook his head. "Typical tactic. They claim they mailed notices, but they never send them. Then they tack on penalties until it looks like you owe thousands. When you can't pay, they swoop in and call it enforcement." Marcus's stomach twisted. He had worked construction for 20 years, saving little by little to build that cabin. It wasn't fancy, just 2 bedrooms, a small porch, and a dock that stretched out into the water. But it was his dream. And for his daughter, it was home. Now it was gone. That same morning, Alicia Johnson, Marcus's sister and a federal prosecutor, was in her office 2 states away. When she saw the video, she nearly dropped her phone. Watching her brother's cabin collapse, hearing her niece cry, seeing Whitaker's smug face, it made her blood boil. She stormed into her supervisor's office. "I need a few days," she said flatly. "Family emergency." Her supervisor raised an eyebrow. "What kind of emergency?" "The kind where I don't come back until justice is served." He knew better than to argue. Alicia was a storm when she got like this. By afternoon, the Johnson group chat was buzzing. Cousins, uncles, aunts, even distant relatives chimed in. Some offered prayers. Others promised action. And then Terrence, the U.S. Marshal cousin, dropped a voice message. "They want to fight? Let's give them one. I'll be there by tomorrow." But while the Johnsons rallied, the whole board was congratulating themselves. Charles Whitaker sat at a long table inside the community center, surrounded by his fellow board members. His polo shirt was crisp, his watch gleamed, and his smirk hadn't faded since the demolition. Johnson's cabin was an eyesore anyway, one of the members muttered, flipping through paperwork. "Exactly," Whitaker said. "You let one guy slide on dues, the whole neighborhood falls apart. We did the right thing." A woman on the board shifted uneasily. "Still, tearing it down without warning? That's pretty extreme." Whitaker shot her a look that silenced her. "Don't be naive. The man's a construction worker with no connections. What's he gonna do? Sue us? He doesn't have the money. By the time he figures it out, the land will be repossessed and resold." The board chuckled. What none of them realized was that Marcus Johnson was anything but alone. That evening, Marcus decided to confront Whitaker directly. He drove to the Ho office. a brick building with shiny glass doors that looked more like a bank than a neighborhood association. His daughter sat in the truck with Daniel, watching cartoons on a tablet, while Marcus walked in. The receptionist, a young woman with nervous eyes, looked up as he approached the desk. "Can I help you?" "I need to speak to Charles Whitaker," Marcus said, his voice low and steady. She hesitated. "Do you have an appointment?" Marcus leaned on the counter, locking eyes with her. "He demolished my home. I think he can make time." Her face paled. She picked up the phone and murmured something. Moments later, Whitaker himself appeared, his smirk still firmly in place. Well, Whitaker drawled. "Mr. Johnson? Didn't expect to see you here so soon." Marcus took a slow breath. He wanted to swing, but instead, he pressed play on his phone. The video of the demolition filled the office, echoing off the walls, his daughter's cries, the bulldozers roaring, Whitaker's own voice saying, "Rules are rules." People in the waiting area turned to watch. Whitaker's smirk twitched. "You think that video's going to save you?" Whitaker asked. Marcus stepped closer, his voice barely above a whisper. "No, but it's gonna bury you." Whitaker's jaw tightened, but he quickly recovered. "You can't intimidate me, Johnson. This is all legal. You'll see." Marcus stared him down. "You made one mistake." "Oh yeah? What's that?" Marcus leaned in, his words like a blade. "You picked the wrong family." When Marcus left the building, Daniel was waiting by the truck. "Well?" he asked. Marcus shook his head, his jaw set. "He thinks he's untouchable." Daniel pulled out his phone, scrolling through contacts. "Then it's time to show him he's not." That night, Alicia arrived. She stormed into Daniel's house, hugging Marcus tight before pulling back to look him in the eyes. "I watched the video. I can't believe this." "You believe it?" Marcus muttered. "You saw the way he smirked." Alicia's voice hardened. "Good, because I'm going to wipe that smirk off his face in court. I'll file motions so fast his head spins. Fraud, abuse of authority, illegal seizure, you name it." Terrence arrived the next morning, his badge glinting on his belt. "I did some digging on the whole," he said, tossing a folder on the table. "Turns out, Whitaker's been pulling this stunt for years. Inflated fees, selective enforcement, targeting people he doesn't like. Marcus isn't the first victim, but he's gonna be the last." Marcus flipped through the papers. Photos, receipts, complaints, all buried until now. His chest tightened. This wasn't just about him anymore. "They've been stealing from families," Terrence said, his voice like gravel. "And now, we've got enough evidence to bury them." Alicia smiled coldly. "Let's make sure we do." But Whitaker wasn't done either. When he saw Marcus's video climbing past 100,000 views online, he knew trouble was coming. He called an emergency whole meeting, rallying the board. "We need to shut him down," he snapped. "If this goes to court, we're finished." One board member asked nervously, "What if his family fights back?" Whitaker's eyes narrowed. "Then we make it personal." By the third day after the demolition, Marcus's video had exploded across the internet. Local news anchors were replaying the footage on the evening broadcast. Talk radio hosts debated it with fiery passion. On Twitter, hashtags like #JusticeForMarcus and #Abuse were trending. Marcus, a man who had once kept to himself and his family, suddenly found his name on national headlines. Reporters knocked at Daniel's door, microphones ready, cameras rolling. Marcus gave only one statement: "They destroyed my home without warning. But I promise you, we're not done here." Behind the scenes, the Johnson family was strategizing. Daniel worked the FBI angle, calling in favors, combing through financial records. Alicia drafted legal motions with surgical precision. Terrence cross-referenced every complaint against Whitaker's home with federal databases. It was like watching a special task force assemble. But this time, the mission was personal. Meanwhile, Charles Whitaker sat in his sleek office, scrolling through his phone with growing unease. Every headline was another nail in his coffin. The smug smile he usually wore was gone, replaced by a clenched jaw. His phone rang. It was his lawyer. "Charles, we've got a problem," the lawyer said. What kind of problem? Whitaker snapped. The video has gone viral. People are calling for investigations. The state attorney general's office is already sniffing around. Whitaker gripped his desk. Then make it go away. That's what I pay you for. The lawyer sighed. This is bigger than a nuisance lawsuit. Johnson's family has connections. Word is, his sister is a federal prosecutor. Whitaker froze. A prosecutor. That's what I'm hearing. If that's true, you need to tread carefully. Whitaker hung up without responding. His stomach churned. He had built his power on intimidation, on neighbors too afraid or too broke to fight back. But if the Johnsons had federal muscle behind them, no, he couldn't let them win. That same night, Marcus and Daniel sat together on the back porch, the lake shimmering under the moonlight. Marcus was exhausted, his face lined with grief, but there was a new steel in his eyes. They think they can scare me into silence, Marcus said, his voice low. But I've got nothing left to lose. They already took it all. Daniel nodded. Then let's hit them where it hurts, money. Most of these HOAs aren't about community. They're about profit. Kickbacks, contracts, inflated fees. We follow the money. We'll find the rot. Marcus exhaled slowly, the night air cool against his skin. And when we do, Daniel looked him dead in the eye. We burn it down legally. The next morning, Terrence brought news. He slammed a folder onto the kitchen table where Alicia and Marcus were reviewing documents. Got it, Terrence said. This hoe has been bleeding people dry for years. Hidden fees, foreclosures, forced buyouts. They've seized 12 homes in the last 5 years, all under the same excuse: unpaid dues. Every time, they resold the properties at a profit. Whitaker and his cronies are pocketing millions. Alicia's eyes narrowed as she flipped through the evidence. This is organized crime hiding under the cover of a neighborhood association. Terrence grinned, but it was sharp, humorless. And now we've got enough to prove it. Marcus's chest tightened as he looked at the photos of families forced out of their homes, their belongings scattered on lawns, children crying. He wasn't the only one. His pain was shared. His fight was their fight. They took more than my cabin, Marcus whispered. They took people's lives. We can't let this go. But Whitaker wasn't about to sit back and wait for the hammer to fall. He called an emergency board meeting that night. The room buzzed with tension as the members sat around the table. Some looked nervous, others outright scared. Whitaker paced like a caged lion. Johnson's family is digging. If they uncover our finances, we're finished, he snapped. One board member raised a trembling hand. Maybe we should just settle, pay him off, make it go away quietly. Whitaker slammed his fist on the table, making everyone jump. No, if we give in once, the whole house of cards falls. We crush him, same as we've done to everyone else. A man in a suit leaned forward. Then we'll need leverage. Something personal. Whitaker's eyes gleamed with cold malice. Exactly. If Johnson wants a war, we'll make sure he loses everything, including his reputation. The next day, Marcus noticed a car following him. Old sedan, tinted windows, keeping just far enough back to not be obvious. When he turned into the grocery store, it turned too. When he left, it followed. He clenched the wheel, pulse racing. He called Daniel. I think they've got someone tailing me. Daniel's voice was calm, but Marcus could hear the steel in it. Get the license plate. Send it to me. We'll run it. Marcus pulled into a gas station, pretended to tie his shoe, and snapped a photo of the plate. He texted it to Daniel. 10 minutes later, Daniel called back. That car belongs to a private investigator, hired by the hoe. Marcus's gut twisted. What are they trying to do? Dig up dirt. Anything they can use to smear you, scare you, discredit you. Marcus looked at his reflection in the rearview mirror. His tired eyes stared back. Let them try. I've got nothing to hide. But deep down, he knew this was just the beginning. 2 nights later, Marcus's daughter woke up screaming. Someone had spray painted "Pay your debts" across Daniel's garage door in bright red letters. Daniel rushed outside, gun drawn, but whoever did it was already gone. The night was silent. except for the chirp of crickets and Marcus's daughter sobbing in the doorway. Alicia's face was pale with fury. They're escalating. This isn't just harassment. It's intimidation. Terrence's voice was gravel. Good. That's their first mistake. Because now, we've got grounds for criminal charges. Marcus held his daughter close, whispering into her hair. His voice shook, but his eyes burned with resolve. They want to fight? Then we'll give them one they'll never forget. The morning after the vandalism, Marcus woke to the smell of burnt rubber and smoke. He stumbled outside barefoot, his heart thundering. His old Ford pickup, the one he had driven to work every day for the last decade, was engulfed in flames. The acrid stench of burning tires and fuel filled the air, choking him. Daniel was already outside with a garden hose, trying to spray down the fire until the fire department arrived. But it was useless. The flames roared, orange and furious, devouring everything. Marcus's daughter clung to his leg, her tiny voice trembling. "Daddy." Roared truck. Marcus swallowed hard, pulling her against his chest. The truck was just metal, just a thing. But the message was clear. This wasn't about money anymore. The hoe wanted to break him. When the fire trucks finally arrived, the fire chief pulled Marcus aside. "This wasn't an accident," he said grimly. "Accelerant on the tires, on the seats. Someone wanted this to burn." Marcus's stomach knotted. He didn't need to ask who. That same morning, Alicia stood in front of a courtroom judge with a stack of files. Her voice was steady, sharp, filled with conviction. "Your Honor, we are filing for an emergency injunction against the Lakeview Hoe. We have evidence of unlawful property seizures, fraudulent fee assessments, and now, acts of intimidation against my client, Marcus Johnson." The judge, an older man with weary eyes, peered over his glasses. "Do you have proof of these intimidation claims?" Alicia slid her phone across the bench. On the screen played a video of the spray-painted garage door, followed by photos of the burned truck. The judge's brow furrowed. "Very well. I'll review the injunction. But Ms. Johnson, be careful. If what you're alleging is true, this case goes beyond civil law." "That's exactly why I'm here," Alicia said firmly. "This isn't just about property. This is about abuse of power." Meanwhile, Whitaker was pacing his office like a cornered animal. His phone buzzed nonstop with calls from angry residents demanding answers. Some had seen the news coverage. Others were furious about their whole dues being higher than promised. One resident barged into his office without knocking. "You think you can bulldoze a man's house and get away with it? My wife wants us out of this neighborhood before you bring the feds down on all of us." Whitaker's face turned crimson. "Sit down before you say something you regret." But the man didn't. He leaned across Whitaker's desk, eyes blazing. "No, Charles. You're the one who's going to regret it." He stormed out, slamming the door behind him. Whitaker slumped into his chair, sweat beading on his forehead. For the first time, the walls of his empire felt like they were closing in. That evening, the Johnsons gathered around Daniel's dining room table. The air was thick with tension. Alicia spread out legal documents while Terrence scrolled through case files on his laptop. Marcus sat silently, his fists clenched on the table. "They torched my truck," he finally said, his voice raw. "They're trying to scare me into backing down." "Good," Terrence said without looking up. "That means they're desperate." Marcus shot him a glare. "Good? My daughter's having nightmares." Terrence finally met his eyes. "Listen, Marcus. People like Whitaker only know one language, fear. The fact that he's resorting to this means he knows he's losing. He's flailing." Daniel added, "Terrence is right. The more reckless he gets, the easier it'll be to nail him. But we can't just react. We need a plan." Alicia tapped her pen against the table. "Here's the plan. We turn this into a federal case. Fraud, racketeering, civil rights violations, the works. But to do that, we need one solid witness from inside the hoe. Someone who's seen everything." Marcus leaned back, rubbing his jaw. Who'd be crazy enough to go against Whitaker? Silence hung over the table until Daniel spoke. "People are scared of him. But fear only lasts so long. We just have to find the one person who's had enough." The breakthrough came sooner than anyone expected. 2 nights later, Marcus got a call from an unknown number. He almost didn't answer, but something in his gut told him to pick up. "Mr. Johnson?" A woman's voice whispered. "Yes, who is this?" "My name's Karen. I'm on the whole board. Please don't hang up. I can't talk long." Marcus sat up straight. "What do you want?" "I saw what they did to your cabin, to your truck. Charles, he's gone too far. I have documents, meeting notes, financial records, proof of everything. But if he finds out I talked to you," Marcus's pulse raced. "Then meet me somewhere safe." The line went quiet for a moment. Then she whispered an address before hanging up. The next day, Marcus and Terrence drove to a quiet diner on the edge of town. The neon sign flickered, the smell of fried food heavy in the air. Karen sat in a corner booth, nervously stirring her coffee. She jumped when they walked in. "You came," Marcus said, sliding into the booth. Karen nodded quickly. She was in her 40s, with tired eyes and hands that trembled as she pushed a folder across the table. "This has everything. Bank transfers, falsified invoices, even emails between Charles and his contractors. He's been using Ho funds like his personal piggy bank. And those demolitions? They were planned. He targets families who can't fight back." Terrence flipped through the papers, his face grim. "This is enough to put him away for years." Karen's eyes filled with tears. "I couldn't stay silent anymore. What he did to you, to your little girl, it was the last straw." Marcus reached across the table, his voice steady. "You did the right thing, and we're going to protect you." Back at Daniel's house, the Johnsons pored over the folder like it was treasure. Alicia's eyes lit up. "This is it. This is the smoking gun." Marcus felt a spark of hope for the first time since his cabin had fallen. "So what happens now?" Daniel smiled coldly. "Now, Charles Whitaker finds out what happens when you mess with the wrong family." The days that followed were a blur of late nights, glowing laptop screens, and whispered strategy sessions around Daniel's dining room table. The Johnsons were no longer on defense. They were building a case that could bring the entire Lakeview Ho crashing down. Alicia stacked copies of Karen's documents, highlighting key passages. "These bank transfers prove Whitaker has been siphoning dues into offshore accounts. And this email trail?" She tapped the page, her eyes narrowing. "This shows collusion with contractors to inflate demolition costs." Terrence leaned back, his fingers steepled. "It's not just fraud. It's organized crime. Racketeering charges could stick if we present this right." Marcus rubbed his temples. "I'm not used to this lawyer talk. All I know is he destroyed my home, my truck, and scared my daughter half to death. I want him to feel even a fraction of what he's put us through." Daniel's voice was calm but deadly serious. "He will, but we have to do it by the book. That way, when he falls hard." The first small victory came when a local reporter named Jasmine Torres broke the story. Standing in front of Marcus's burned truck, she looked into the camera with fire in her eyes. "Tonight, we bring you the shocking story of a black family targeted by their homeowners association, a cabin demolished without due process, a vehicle burned to ashes, and now, allegations of fraud at the highest levels of the Ho board." The clip aired on the evening news, sparking outrage across the county. Neighbors began whispering, questioning why their dues had doubled, why their requests for maintenance were ignored. Marcus sat on the couch with his daughter asleep in his lap, watching the broadcast. For the first time, he felt the tide turning. He wasn't just a victim anymore. He was the face of resistance. But Whitaker wasn't going down quietly. The morning after the report aired, Marcus found a thick envelope shoved under Daniel's front door. Inside was a cease and desist letter from Whitaker's lawyer, filled with legal jargon and threats of defamation suits. Marcus tossed it onto the table in disgust. "They think this'll scare us off?" Alicia smirked. "Classic bully move. Empty threats meant to rattle us. But you know what? It means he's sweating," Terrence added. "And if he's sweating, he's slipping." Still, Marcus couldn't ignore the knot of anxiety twisting in his gut. Whitaker had already torched his truck. What was he capable of next? Karen, the whistleblower, was terrified. She called Alicia nearly every night, her voice trembling. Charles has been sniffing around, asking who's been talking to reporters. If he finds out it's me, Alicia cut her off gently. You're not alone anymore. You did the right thing. We'll make sure you're protected. Terrence quietly arranged for federal witness protection protocols, though Karen didn't know the details yet. For the Johnsons, protecting her wasn't just about the case. It was about honor. As evidence piled up, so did the tension. Whitaker started retaliating in petty but relentless ways. One morning, Marcus found his mailbox smashed in. Another day, a dead raccoon was left on Daniel's porch. Late at night, cars with tinted windows would idle outside the house, engines rumbling like growls in the dark. Marcus's nerves were fraying. He confided in Daniel one night after everyone else had gone to bed. I feel like I'm dragging y'all into danger. They're coming after me, but it's spilling over onto you. Daniel placed a firm hand on his shoulder. We're family. You don't fight battles like this alone. You understand? They came for one of us. They got all of us. Marcus blinked back tears, nodding. It wasn't just words. It was a promise. The next breakthrough came from Terrence. He had been digging into Whitaker's background, combing through decades of financial records and property transfers. Got him, Terrence announced one night, slapping a stack of papers on the table. He's been laundering money through shell companies tied to his construction firm. And guess what? Some of those companies don't even exist. Alicia's jaw tightened. That's criminal. Straight federal jurisdiction. The kind of charges that carry 20 years, minimum. Marcus exhaled, a mix of relief and anger. So why does he still walk around free, acting untouchable? Because nobody's had the guts or the evidence to pin him down, Terrence replied. Until now, the Johnsons weren't the only ones emboldened by the news reports. Other residents began quietly reaching out. An elderly couple dropped off a folder of their own, filled with unexplained fee hikes. A young mother showed Alicia letters threatening foreclosure over unpaid dues she had receipts for. The evidence wasn't just stacking up, it was multiplying. The HOA's corruption was no longer a whispered suspicion. It was an open secret waiting to explode. But with every step forward, the danger escalated. One night, Marcus returned from picking up groceries to find a shadowy figure standing on the edge of Daniel's driveway. The man didn't move, didn't speak, just watched. Hey, Marcus called out, his voice sharp. The figure turned slowly before slipping into the darkness. Marcus's hands shook as he carried the bags inside. He didn't tell his daughter. She had already suffered enough. But he told Daniel and Terrence, who exchanged a grim look. They're trying to spook us, Daniel said. Means we're getting close. Terrence cracked his knuckles. Good. Let him try. The real confrontation was brewing, not just in court, but in the streets, in the neighborhood itself. Whitaker called an emergency home meeting, his voice booming over the community loudspeaker. There's been a lot of misinformation spread by people with personal vendettas, he declared. This association stands for order and respect, and anyone who doesn't like it can get out. But instead of cheers, Whitaker was met with murmurs of doubt, even anger. Residents shifted uncomfortably, whispering to one another. Jasmine, the reporter, was there with her camera rolling, capturing every word. Marcus stood at the back of the crowd, fists clenched. He wanted to shout, to expose Whitaker right there. But Daniel's hand on his shoulder held him back. Not yet. Timing is everything. Marcus swallowed his rage. He'd wait. But deep inside, he knew the moment was coming when silence would no longer be an option. The whole clubhouse was packed wall to wall. Folding chairs scraped against the tile as neighbors crowded in, their voices rising in anxious waves. For years, meetings like this had been dull, predictable, Whitaker presiding like a king over his subjects. But tonight was different. Tonight, everyone knew something big was about to happen. Marcus sat near the front with Alicia at his side. Daniel leaned against the wall, his arms crossed, scanning the room with a soldier's vigilance. Terrence was in the back, a laptop bag slung over his shoulder, ready for the moment when evidence would turn into firepower. Whitaker strutted in wearing his signature-tailored suit and smug grin, as if nothing in the world could touch him. He banged the gavel on the podium. Order. This meeting will come to order. His voice boomed, but the murmurs didn't stop. I've called you here to put an end to the slander, the lies, the baseless attacks on this board. Certain individuals, his gaze flicked to Marcus, have been stirring trouble, spreading falsehoods. And I won't stand for it. Marcus felt the weight of dozens of eyes on him. His hands curled into fists. Whitaker slammed the gavel again. Before we proceed, I want everyone to know the Johnson family is under investigation for trespassing, unpaid dues, and harassment of Ho officials. They don't belong here, and they never did. Gasps rippled through the room. Marcus shot to his feet. You destroyed my cabin. You burned my truck. And you dare stand here and call me a liar? His voice shook with anger, but also with power. Whitaker sneered. You can't prove anything. That was the cue. Terrence walked down the aisle, calm as a man walking into Sunday service. He opened his laptop and plugged it into the projector. The screen behind Whitaker flickered to life. This, Terrence said, his voice low but steady, is what proof looks like. The first slide appeared. Bank statements, showing Ho dues funneled into offshore accounts. Murmurs swelled into shouts. The next, emails between Whitaker and contractors, discussing inflated demolition costs. Make it look official. No one will question the fees. Gasps. Then, photographs of Karen's signed meeting notes, showing deliberate targeting of families. Highlighted lines read, identify weak households, prioritize for enforcement, maximize revenue. The room erupted. Whitaker turned pale. He lunged toward Terrence. Turn that off. That's stolen property. But Alicia was already on her feet. Actually, these are official Ho records, provided by a sitting board member. Perfectly admissible in court. Whitaker's jaw dropped. Who? Who betrayed me? All eyes turned as Karen rose slowly from the back of the room. Her voice trembled, but her words cut like steel. I did, because I couldn't watch you ruin another family's life. The crowd broke into a frenzy. Some shouted at Whitaker, others demanded answers, while a few stormed out, faces twisted with shame. Whitaker pounded the podium, his face beat red. None of this proves anything. This is a witch hunt. Daniel stepped forward, his voice like a command on the battlefield. Sit down, Charles. It's over. But Whitaker wasn't finished. In a final desperate move, he pulled a folder from under the podium and waved it in the air. You think you're clever? Well, I've got dirt too. Marcus Johnson owes thousands in back dues. He's nothing but a squatter. He slammed the papers onto the podium. Alicia snatched them up, flipping through with trained eyes. Within seconds, she smirked. These aren't dues notices. They're doctored invoices. Look at the dates. Half of them are from before Marcus even bought his cabin. The crowd gasped again. Whitaker's last card had just turned to ash. Marcus stepped forward, his voice steady but thunderous. You tried to strip me of my home, my dignity, my safety. But you forgot one thing, Whitaker. He glanced at his siblings, then back at the room. You messed with the wrong family. Just then, the double doors at the back of the clubhouse swung open. Two men in dark suits strode in, flashing badges. Federal agents, one announced. Charles Whitaker, you're under arrest for fraud, racketeering, and conspiracy to commit arson. The room went silent. Whitaker froze, the color draining from his face. This is a mistake. You can't do this to me. One of the agents snapped cuffs around his wrists. You should have thought of that before torching trucks and stealing millions. Whitaker thrashed, his voice cracking. You'll regret this. I own this neighborhood. But the words rang hollow as he was dragged out in front of the people he had ruled for so long. The clubhouse exploded into noise. Some residents cheered. Others wept. Jasmine, the reporter, caught every second on camera, her live feed spreading across social media. Marcus stood in the middle of the chaos, chest heaving, overwhelmed. He felt Alicia's hand on his shoulder. It's over, she whispered. But Daniel's sharp eyes scanned the room. Not yet. The board still has to be dissolved. The system that let him thrive, it's still there. Tonight was just the beginning. Marcus looked around at the faces, neighbors, allies, strangers who had finally seen the truth. For the first time in months, he felt a glimmer of hope. Later that night, as the family regrouped at Daniel's house, the adrenaline slowly wore off. Marcus tucked his daughter into bed, her breathing soft and steady. She was finally sleeping without fear. In the kitchen, Terrence poured coffee, his expression grim. Whitaker's gone, but his cronies are still out there. Some of them benefited from this scam. They won't go quietly. Alicia nodded. We'll take them one by one. Tonight proved something. When you shine light on corruption, people wake up. Daniel looked at Marcus. And you, don't forget what you did tonight. You stood your ground. You showed them they couldn't break you. Marcus exhaled, staring into his cup. I didn't do it alone. I couldn't have. The morning after Whitaker's arrest, Lakeview felt like a different world. The air was quieter, almost relieved, as if the trees themselves were exhaling after holding their breath for too long. For the first time in months, Marcus walked outside without feeling eyes burning into his back. His daughter chased butterflies in the yard, laughter ringing out like music instead of fear. But beneath the calm, something unsettled lingered. News trucks lined the neighborhood entrance, reporters swarming for sound bites. The whole clubhouse, once Whitaker's throne, was now sealed with yellow tape, and neighbors who had once avoided Marcus now approached him timidly, some apologizing, some begging for answers. Mr. Johnson, an elderly woman said, clutching her shawl, We didn't know. We just thought you were being difficult. Marcus nodded, swallowing down a bitter laugh. That's how people like Whitaker survive. They make you think the victim's the problem. The woman's eyes welled with tears. I'm sorry. For Marcus, forgiveness would take time. But at least the silence had finally broken. Inside Daniel's house, the family gathered around the kitchen table once more. Coffee mugs, stacks of papers, and weary eyes filled the room. Terrence flipped through new reports. So far, Whitaker's facing over a dozen charges. Fraud, racketeering, arson, the works. Federal prosecutors are already circling. Alicia adjusted her glasses, voice steady but thoughtful. That's good, but his lawyers are vicious. They'll drag this out, maybe even try to flip it back on us. Daniel nodded. And don't forget the rest of the board. They might pretend they didn't know, but corruption that big doesn't happen in a vacuum. Marcus leaned forward, his hands clasped. So what now? He's in cuffs. Doesn't that mean it's over? Daniel's gaze was firm. No, this is when the real work begins. And he was right. By the end of the week, whole board members scrambled to distance themselves. Some resigned quietly. Others claimed ignorance. But not all of them were ready to surrender. At a hastily called community meeting, one board member, Mr. Caldwell, a wiry man with a sharp tongue, stood and tried to rally the crowd. Whitaker's arrest was a travesty, Caldwell barked. This family has torn apart our community with lies. Do you think the feds care about us? About property values? No, they'll strip us bare and leave us worse off than before. The room buzzed with uncertainty. Some residents nodded, but many shook their heads, weary of manipulation. Marcus stood slowly. His voice was calm, but it carried. You can't gaslight us anymore. We've seen the proof. We've seen the emails, the fraud, the fear you all allowed. Whitaker didn't act alone, and you know it. Caldwell's face twisted. You don't belong here, Johnson. You never did. That word, belong, struck Marcus like a match to dry tinder. I belong anywhere I set my roots, Marcus said, his voice rising. And no board, no bully, no bigot will ever take that away from me or my family again. The crowd erupted, not in outrage, but in applause. Jasmine's camera caught every second. Caldwell's face drained of power as the tide turned against him. Back at Daniel's, Karen sat at the dining table, wringing her hands. They'll come for me next, she whispered. Caldwell, the others, they'll blame me. Alicia shook her head. No, they can't touch you. You're under protection now. Karen looked at Marcus, tears in her eyes. I was part of it for too long. I stayed quiet while they preyed on families like yours. How do I live with that? Marcus leaned forward, his voice soft but steady. You chose the right side when it mattered most. You helped bring them down. That's what you live with. Karen nodded slowly, a glimmer of peace crossing her face. But while the neighborhood wrestled with its conscience, Whitaker himself wasn't fading quietly. From jail, his lawyers issued fiery statements to the press. My client is the victim of a politically motivated witch hunt. These charges are exaggerated, fabricated by opportunists seeking attention. The spin worked on some. Social media lit up with debates. Some residents calling Whitaker a crook, others painting him as a martyr. The Johnsons' names were dragged online, twisted by trolls and whispers. Marcus scrolled through the comments one night, fury bubbling in his chest. They're still defending him. After everything, Terrence closed the laptop. Let him. Truth has a way of burning through the noise. We've already lit the match. The FBI agents handling Whitaker's case reached out to the Johnsons privately. One agent, a tall black woman named Agent Reed, shook Marcus's hand firmly. You stood your ground against a system designed to crush you. That's not small, Mr. Johnson. That's history. Marcus felt a weight lift at her words. He had carried so much anger, so much grief, but hearing it framed as more than survival, as legacy, gave him strength. History doesn't feel this exhausting, Marcus muttered. Agent Reed smiled. That's because you're still in the middle of it. The fallout spread further. Property values dipped as news of the scandal rocked Lakeview. Some residents threatened lawsuits against the board. Others packed up and moved away. The community was fractured, scarred, but also freer than it had been in years. One evening, Marcus walked past his cabin's ruins with his daughter. The charred remains looked haunting under the fading sunset. She tugged at his hand. Daddy, can we build it again? Marcus crouched, looking into her wide, hopeful eyes. For the first time, he didn't feel broken when he looked at the rubble. He felt determined. Yeah, baby, he said softly. We're gonna build it again, stronger than before. That night, the Johnson family sat on the porch together. The cicadas hummed. The air was thick with summer heat. But for once, there was peace. Daniel passed Marcus a glass of iced tea. You realize people are looking at you differently now? Not just as the guy they tried to break, but as the man who stood tall. Marcus shook his head. I never wanted to be anybody's symbol. I just wanted to live. Alicia smiled faintly. Sometimes just living, just refusing to bow, makes you a symbol whether you want to be or not. Terrence raised his glass. To family, to fighting back, to justice. They clinked glasses, the sound ringing out like a promise. The weeks after Whitaker's arrest unfolded like the slow healing of a wound. The shock had passed, but the scars remained. Lakeview was no longer the HOA's kingdom. It was something new, something uncertain. For Marcus, life was cautiously returning to normal. He woke each morning to the sound of his daughter's laughter instead of the crunch of bulldozers or the hiss of spray paint cans. Still, every time a car slowed near Daniel's house, his body tensed. Trauma doesn't disappear overnight. But the Johnsons weren't just surviving anymore. They were shaping what came next. Karen, the whistleblower, stood at the community center podium one evening, her hands trembling as she faced dozens of neighbors. It was her first public appearance since the scandal broke. I was on the board, she admitted, her voice shaky but strong. I stayed silent for too long. I watched people lose their homes, watched families struggle, and I told myself it wasn't my place. But silence is a choice, and it was the wrong one. She took a deep breath, her eyes locking on Marcus and the crowd. It was Marcus and his family who reminded me that standing up matters. I can't undo what I allowed, but I can help build something better. The crowd didn't cheer, but they didn't jeer either. Instead, a steady ripple of nods moved through the room. Forgiveness wouldn't be instant, but redemption was possible, and Karen was willing to earn it. Afterward, she approached Marcus, eyes brimming with gratitude. You don't know what it means to me that you didn't turn me away. Marcus shook her hand firmly. What matters is you chose courage when it counted. For the first time in years, Karen smiled without fear. Meanwhile, Jasmine Tarr's reporting spread beyond Lakeview. Her story made regional headlines, then national news. Black family exposes whole corruption, read one article. Another featured Marcus's picture under the headline, A Father's Fight for Justice. Marcus wasn't comfortable with the spotlight. He avoided interviews when he could, preferring to let Alicia or Daniel handle the media. But one evening, he agreed to sit down with Jasmine for a follow-up. "Why did you fight back, Marcus?" Jasmine asked, her recorder running. He paused, staring at the floor for a moment before lifting his eyes. "Because I had to. Because my little girl asked me if we'd ever be safe again. And I couldn't let her grow up thinking the answer was no." Jasmine leaned forward. "What would you say to other families going through something similar?" Marcus thought about it. His voice cracked slightly as he spoke. "Don't let them convince you that you don't belong. Don't let fear silence you. You have more power than you think, and you're not alone." That clip went viral within hours. People across the country reached out, some sharing their own horror stories with HOAs, others thanking Marcus for inspiring them. For the first time, Marcus realized his fight had become bigger than Lakeview. The cabin site itself became a symbol of resilience. Neighbors, some who had once turned away, began showing up with lumber, tools, and sweat equity. Together, they cleared debris, hammered nails, and raised new walls. One Saturday morning, Marcus's daughter painted a sign that read, "Johnson Cabin, stronger than ever." She stuck it in the dirt beside the foundation. Beaming, Marcus stood back, watching volunteers work under the sun. For months he had felt broken, but now he felt whole again, because rebuilding wasn't something he was doing alone. It was something the community was doing with him. Not everyone was on board with the change, of course. Caldwell and a handful of Whitaker loyalists muttered about witch hunts and outsiders ruining traditions. But their voices grew smaller with each passing week, drowned out by neighbors who wanted transparency and fairness. The whole board dissolved under federal order, and in its place, residents voted for a new council. This time, it wasn't stacked with insiders or power-hungry opportunists. Teachers, retirees, young parents, all stepped up to create something different. Karen was elected as the interim chairwoman. It was controversial, given her past, but she stood at the podium with humility. "I can't erase the mistakes I made," she said, "but I can dedicate myself to making sure nothing like this ever happens again." Marcus watched from the back, arms crossed. He wasn't sure if he trusted her fully yet, but he respected the effort. One night, the Johnsons sat together on the porch, the crickets chirping in the warm air. Terrence scrolled through messages on his phone. "You won't believe this," he said. "People from other neighborhoods are reaching out, asking how to fight their corrupt HOAs. Some are even inviting us to speak at town halls." Marcus groaned. "I'm no politician. I'm just a man who wanted to be left alone." Alicia smiled softly. "That's exactly why people trust you. You didn't ask for the fight. You just refused to back down." Daniel leaned forward, his gaze steady. "Marcus, this isn't just your story anymore. It's a blueprint. People are watching, learning." Marcus looked out at the half-built cabin in the distance, framed by moonlight. He thought of his daughter's laughter, of Karen's trembling speech, of neighbors sweating side by side on weekends. Maybe this wasn't just survival anymore. Maybe it was legacy. Karen stopped by the porch one evening, holding a folder. "I've been working with the new board," she explained. "We're drafting a policy to make sure no family can ever be targeted like yours again. Transparency, oversight, accountability." Marcus flipped through the pages. "Looks good," he admitted. Karen smiled faintly. "I know it'll take time for people to trust me again, but I'll spend the rest of my life making sure I earn it." Marcus studied her for a moment before nodding. "Just make sure no kid in this neighborhood ever has to see their home torn down. That's all I ask." By the end of the month, the cabin's frame stood tall, sunlight glinting off new wood. The smell of sawdust and fresh paint filled the air. Neighbors laughed, shared food, passed hammers. And as Marcus lifted the final beam into place, a cheer went up. Not just because the cabin was being rebuilt, but because dignity was being restored. Marcus never imagined his fight with a homeowners association would become anything larger than a personal battle for survival. But standing in front of his rebuilt cabin, fresh wood gleaming in the afternoon sun, he understood something profound. This wasn't just his story anymore. The cabin was more than a structure. It was a message, a declaration, proof that intimidation, corruption, and greed could be challenged and defeated. One crisp Saturday morning, Marcus was invited to speak at a nearby town's community hall. The space was packed. Teachers, retirees, parents, young activists, all eager to hear from the man who had stood up to Lakeview's notorious hoe. He stood at the front of the room, nervous at first, his hands brushing his jeans. Public speaking wasn't his comfort zone, but as he looked out at the expectant faces, his heart steadied. He wasn't there to impress anyone. He was there to tell the truth. "I didn't set out to be anyone's example," Marcus began. His voice was calm, grounded. "All I wanted was to protect my home, my daughter, my peace." He paused, letting the weight of the words sink in. But when someone tries to strip you of your dignity, when they try to make you believe you don't belong, that's when you find out what you're made of. I fought back because silence would have meant surrender, and surrender wasn't an option. The room was silent, every ear tuned to his words. "What I've learned," Marcus continued, "is that justice isn't given. It's claimed. You can't wait for someone to hand it to you. You have to stand tall, even when your knees are shaking, even when the odds feel impossible. Because once you push back, you'll find others willing to stand with you." Applause broke out, loud and lasting. Some stood, clapping, nodding with tears in their eyes. Marcus felt heat rush to his cheeks, humble but grateful. After the event, people crowded around him. A single mother shared how her hoe had fined her thousands for leaving her trash cans visible. A retired veteran told Marcus how his neighborhood tried to evict him over a flagpole. "These stories," Marcus said quietly to Alicia later, "they're everywhere. We're not the only ones." Alicia squeezed his hand. "That's why your voice matters. People are seeing they don't have to take it anymore." In the weeks that followed, letters poured in, handwritten notes, emails, even phone calls. Families thanked him for giving them courage. Activists asked him to join their causes. Journalists requested interviews. Marcus read one letter aloud at the dinner table. "Dear Mr. Johnson, I don't know you, but I want to thank you. When our hope threatened to foreclose on us, my husband and I thought we had no choice but to leave. After hearing your story, we decided to fight, and we won. You saved our home too." His daughter clapped her hands. "Daddy, you're a hero," Marcus chuckled, shaking his head. "I'm no hero. I'm just stubborn." But inside, he felt something shift. Maybe being stubborn in the face of injustice was a kind of heroism after all. Daniel, the federal agent, framed the bigger picture one evening as the family sat around the fire pit. "What happened here wasn't just about Lakeview," Daniel explained. His voice was thoughtful, his gaze steady on the flames. "It's about a system, about power unchecked. Whitaker thought he could destroy you because he believed nobody would stop him. And for years, he was right. People let him get away with it. Until you said no." Marcus poked at the fire with a stick. "So what? You're saying this could have happened anywhere?" Daniel nodded. "It does happen anywhere. Everywhere. The lesson here isn't just about one man standing up. It's about community, about accountability, and about reminding people that no one's above the law." Terrence leaned in, smirking. "Sounds like a sermon, Daniel." Daniel grinned. "Maybe it is.